everybody, my name is Emma, this is Emma Roseland Books. I make videos about writing, indie publishing, reading, other bits and pieces here and there when I feel like it, like travel vlogs and stuff like that. If you like bookish content, please do consider subscribing. I would love to have you as a subscriber. In today's video, I wanted to do a book review. Do you know, I'm sitting on this chair so weirdly. Sorry, I'm like crouching. Anyway, in this video I wanted to do a book review for a book I realised I never reviewed on this channel. I did review it on my blog and on Amazon and Goodreads, but I never made a video and I wanted to. So, this book is called The Breast Book. It's by Emma Pickett and it's a really lovely little book. So, I shall tell you more because that's how book reviews work. This is going well today. I really can't speak properly. My brain's a bit fuzzy because I've got a cold, so sorry. Now, I've reviewed some other breastfeeding or breast-related books because I wrote a book about breastfeeding, so in writing that book I read a lot. Also in Breastfeeding Through Children I read a lot because when you're a book fan and you're, you know, learning about something, then you just devour information. So over the last nearly 10 years, I've read an awful lot of stuff about breastfeeding and written a lot of stuff about breastfeeding, and so whereas sometimes I feel like I can't give detailed reviews about books because I feel that, you know, I didn't do a degree in English literature and I don't have, I don't know, I just sometimes think like I'm not qualified and I don't have the knowledge about literature to review it. And although I do talk on my wrap-ups about books, when I want to make an individual book review that's just one video, I want to make it where I feel confident that I know what I'm saying. Does that make any kind of sense? I am going off on a tangent. Basically what I'm saying is I've reviewed a few breastfeeding books. You can look on my playlist if you want to have a look. I have reviewed some other books as well, but predominantly that's the genre that I have reviewed, and that is why. Good. So, The Breast Book came out in 2019. This is one of the very few books that I pre-ordered. I was very excited to see this come out. I wanted to have this on my shelf. This is a book, it says, A Puberty Guide with a Difference. It's the when, why and how of breasts. And with a 9-year-old boy, 7-year-old girl and a 2-year-old girl, I thought a book like this, just sat on the bookcase that they can pick up if they want to, I probably will move it upstairs to their bookcases, would be a really good thing. And I just wanted to have this in my house. I thought that it would be very important. I actually know Emma Pickett. So she is an IBCLC, which is a lactation consultant. It stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, something like that, I don't know. But it's a protected term. It basically means that you're like, you're the top dog of boobs. Anyway, she also is an ex-teacher, and so she's really well placed to write a book that has all that information about breasts, what they are, how they work, how they develop, and all that stuff, but directed towards younger children, and with her having the knowledge of how to communicate with kids and make sure that it's geared, you know, it's age appropriate. So, I'm going to start off with how the book is structured, and then I will come on to sort of my opinions about it, and why I picked it up as well. So, before I start though, what I did want to say is if you are interested in this book and you look it up, and you notice that the reviews are a bit strange, this book did get jumped on by people who weren't too happy about the inclusion of a story about a trans man going through puberty, and they trolled the reviews for this book. So you may see that it's rather odd. It's got a lot of 5-star reviews and a lot of 1-star reviews. I don't think it takes a whole lot to actually kind of read between the lines and make your own decisions about that. But yeah, I just wanted to say, if you look this book up and you kind of look at the reviews and think, oh, that's why. So anyway, so this book goes through various different things. It goes through being a teeny baby, so it sort of talks about like child development and babies breastfeeding when they're, and you know, breast milk and that kind of thing when you're, because it kind of goes through your life basically. Then here come the buds, so it goes through puberty. Bras, so it talks about the different kinds of bras and how to choose one, how to get fitted and all that. Being a grown-up, I mean, I could probably do with reading that chapter. I can't remember what's in that one. Being a mother, so that goes into breastfeeding in some more detail. Who makes the rules, which sort of talks a little bit more about society and politics and that kind of stuff. And Our Breast Friends, which I can't remember what that was about. That seems to have some stories. Yeah, it's some stories of people's experiences. And then the end is your breast story. So it just sort of summarises everything basically. So, and then it's got an index. Now this book is really beautifully laid out. It's a very pretty book. It's got these lovely illustrations all the way through it. It's really colourful. See, look, lovely illustrations. It's also got photographs. Yeah, you get the idea. It's got diagrams. It's a really, look, photographs. It's a really, really nice book. The tone of it is lovely. It's very conversational. It uses biological words, but explains them completely so that you know, anybody reading this can understand what's going on. I mean, I read this and I learned stuff from it. I didn't know anything about, what's it called, mammoneogenesis, I think is the term, which is growing breasts. Although I know about breastfeeding and breast milk and lots of that kind of stuff, I actually didn't know anything about when your breasts actually develop and how that works, and so that was really, really interesting to me. So even as an adult, this is a nice read, even though obviously the tone is for, you know, a teenager, I guess. It's aimed at like year 5, 6 kind of. I personally think that this book is really, really important, and it's part of why I jumped on it. I think that there's just such a hole in terms of learning about this stuff. I mean, when I look back at my experience of learning about puberty and sex education and that kind of thing, and when I look at my experience of being a biology teacher and teaching year 7 children about puberty and sex education and development and all that kind of stuff, you go into a lot of detail about the menstrual cycle, a lot, how it works, the hormones, you know, how to cope with it, the changes. And then breasts are almost like it's just like a sideline. It's like an annual grow breast. It's a secondary sexual characteristic, that's it. You know, and there's no, like, this is how it works. There's not even, the only time that breastfeeding was mentioned on the curriculum was to talk about antibodies and say, you know, to talk about immunity. Not when you're talking about physical development. And for somebody who's experiencing their body going through that, or seeing other people having their bodies change, to understand why and actually what's going on underneath their skin, I think really helps to just understand, like, oh, that's why that's happening and that's what's happening, okay. And whatever your intentions are about breastfeeding, it just, you know, your biology is going to do what it does, and you need to kind of understand what's going on there. And that was just terribly phrased. You just need to, I think it's so important that to understand what your body is doing or what somebody else's body is doing, because otherwise it's just like aliens have invaded. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just that it's just so important, and it's not there. And when you also look at breastfeeding and the fact that people don't learn about it because of the fact that there are low rates, lots of people don't breastfeed, so children aren't exposed to it, they don't see people breastfeeding that much, you know, they don't talk about it, schools don't talk about it, it's not in the curriculum, parents don't talk about it, and then they get to breastfeeding and they know nothing, they don't know anything particularly about their breast, and then we wonder why it's such, so it's there's just this like huge knowledge gap, you know, and so, as I say, regardless of whether somebody is going to end up breastfeeding or not, actually understanding how your body works, why your body is how it is, and to be comfortable with that throughout your life. And then if you do come to breastfeed, you do understand some foundations of that, instead of coming along to just nothing. And realistically, you know, if we were in hunter-gatherer societies, that is what would have happened. We would have been exposed to people around us breastfeeding. Everyone would be okay with it and have seen it, and just, you know, it would be, it's one of those conversations that wouldn't need to be had, you know. And again, with breast development, rather than it being sort of embarrassing, and all those taboos make such a mess of things like how women feel about their bodies, and like the sexualization of breasts as well, and then how that kind of knocks on to how you dress and how you feel about yourself, and how, you know, all of that is so political and messy, and there's so much misunderstanding and misinformation. And so given all of that, this book is just so important to just kind of say, right, this is the biology of it, this is what's going on. When you grow breasts, this is what's happening, and this is why, and then, you know, this is how you buy bras, and this is what's, you know, it answers all those questions like, you know, does size matter, and what do different kinds of breasts look like, and, you know, it's sort of explaining all of that, so that instead of being embarrassed and worried and not being able to ask, and it's uncomfortable to ask and it's inappropriate to ask and all that stuff, it's just like, here you go. Now you know. So I just think that it's so important it does all of those things. It's got a little note in the front to parents and carers, which is nice, that if you bought this book or came across this book, you can have a little read and kind of see what the book's about and what the message is, and why it's here. It does also experience about the fact that perhaps if you didn't breastfeed your baby, not to be uncomfortable about the fact that that's included within this book, because it is just about explaining what breasts are for, and that is what they're for. So what else is there that I wanted to say? Because there was definitely some other stuff. Yeah, I mean, basically, if you wanted to get this for your child, which I did, and actually Emma signed it because I ran into her at an event and I took the book with me and was like, sign my book please, so she signed it to my children. If you bought this book, I mean, personally for me, I would feel completely happy with giving it, well, I have given it to my children. It sits on my bookcase, but at some point I will move it to theirs. This is, I mean, I talk about breastfeeding all the time. I'm involved in breastfeeding support. I've written a book about breastfeeding. For me to talk about boobs is of no great surprise to my children. And they just wouldn't even blink at me saying, hey, here's a book about breasts for you. They'd be like, oh, typical, that's just mum. But I think for most parents, even if you might feel a little bit weird and uncomfortable about it, to buy a book and be like, hey, I've heard this is quite good, you might find it interesting. Yeah, I think that's okay. It might be a bit like awkward, but you know, I think especially if you do it like how I did, where I bought it for myself and then said, oh, I bought this because I wanted to read it, but it's kind of aimed at your age, so it's yours if you want it. I think that's quite a nice way of doing it. But if you're buying it for somebody who's not your child, so maybe your niece or nephew or godchild or friend's kid or whatever, that maybe is a little bit more awkward, and it does talk in the book about, you know, maybe saying to the parents, oh, I've bought this book, is that okay? Like, maybe you want to give it to them, or so there's that. But I do think if you've got a kid in your life, particularly if it's your own child, who is coming up to puberty, and you know full well that this stuff is not on the curriculum, and I think especially if you're uncomfortable about talking about it, I mean, within our household, you know, my kids have grown up going to a breastfeeding group. They still go to a breastfeeding group with me because, you know, they like it. They see their friends, you know. And so therefore, they're there for the conversations about how breasts work and a little bit about puberty, and, you know, they've just been in the conversations, and it's just been part of like the underlying conversations. So I don't necessarily think that maybe they would learn so much about it as maybe some other people would. And personally, I'm not uncomfortable at all about talking about these kind of things, and I would bring the conversations up. So, but I think particularly if you are uncomfortable or you feel like you don't know this stuff, this book does hold a really useful place, and is well worth a buy, or a lend, or whatever. So I would thoroughly recommend this. As I say, if you have got young people reaching puberty in your life and you think that they might like it, they might read it. And I have got a flashing memory card thing. Yeah, so this, as I say, you know, this is a really appropriately written. I would say that the only downside, because if this is a review to give critiques as well, there were times where I found that it kind of came around to the same material again. Like, it just, there were times when I like things neatly in boxes. Do you know what I mean? And like, sometimes I was like, that bit shouldn't be in this chapter, that should be in a different chapter, because, you know, that belongs there. So that, for me personally, there were just bits where I was like, okay, you know, you've already talked about this bit, why is that now in this box again? Because I like it in its box. This review's going well. Hopefully that makes any kind of sense to you. But that's the only criticism I could give, and it really didn't bother me that much. So, yeah, as I say, this, in terms of puberty guides, in terms of things that are kind of nicely written and comfortably written and nicely presented and just an attractive book, you know, that isn't just all about periods. And in fact, periods are barely mentioned in here because it's not about that. I think that that's really, really good. And I do love the fact that it does talk about, you know, like it talks about, next page, no, it's not, like billboards and like sexualization of breasts, but again, in an age-appropriate way, so that people can understand, children can understand that kind of stuff. So yeah, I hope my children will read this at some point and will get something out of it. And I definitely learned things from it that I didn't know. So yeah, a good book. I think I gave it 5 stars when I read it last year, and I would definitely be encouraging my kids to read it. And there's just nothing else like it. There's just really not, that knowledge about breasts is not there. And I would love to have known this stuff when I was a teenager. So yeah, and actually, do you know what? Even if your teens are past puberty, there's still no harm in suggesting that they might be interested to read this. And as an adult, if you're interested, I enjoyed it. So, you know, yeah, a good one that I will put back on my bookcase. If you enjoyed that video, I can't do this one-handed, or can I? Yes. Oh, by the way, it's Valentine's Day recently. People outside. Go away. If you enjoyed this review, then please do hit the like button. Let me know if there are any other books that you would like me to review, you know, in a 1 book per video format rather than my monthly wrap-ups. I must have talked about this in my wrap-up actually when I read it last year, but I didn't give it like a single video review. So yeah, do let me know. And let me know if you've got any kind of like adolescent appropriate books that you would recommend to help, as my kids are just coming to that age. What would you recommend? Have you read anything, whether it's about puberty or whether, you know, just good things for young people to read as they come up to that tricky time? I'd be really interested to know actually, so please do leave those in the comments. Yeah. Leave me a comment, please like, please subscribe if you would like more videos about writing, reading, bookish things, other stuff, and I'm gonna go and recover from this cold, and I will see you all soon for another video. Take care.